Here we go. Let's see. No drop frames is good. I am probably just going to be working on doing, or like revamping my mixing templates, and I already can tell that you can't see part of what I'm doing, so I have to fix that now. Is it that, or do I have to do... Man, this screen capture stuff is weird. Window title? No. It's this thing. Is it changing? It is changing. I guess that works. I'll just leave it like that. So there's a window you can't see. But I'm just gonna start with my existing template. And I'm thinking about changing some things up. I just got a new channel strip. I used the BrainWorks console SSL 4000E like everywhere. Because it's so good. But I just got the BrainWorks Focusrite Studio console channel strip, and it's really good for certain things too. So I'm just gonna like pull some audio in and yeah, just like see what it works on. I want to add like a dirt bus to my parallel processing. So I'll be doing that. I'm just gonna pull in some audio from some stuff I've done and see if I can get things to sound good. It's loading. I guarantee you that it's loading. You just can't see it. All right. So, I mean, this is my mixing template. I just have some folders for drums. Some stuff is preset in here. Percussion, bass with some DI magic going on. Just plugins already in place on each of these things in the mixer. If I go to big size, you can see there's a lot of things in here. Especially if I pull this up, you can see I've got each of these groups for the drums going to several different parallel processors, which I have right here. And it's like the glue from Cytomic just for SSL, kind of not thwacky, but it has like a big click in like the crack of the drums come out really easy. So like I have all the kick, snare, and toms and a snare room reverb that I have set up going to this. Just the cymbals in the room for this smash, which I'm using the monster for, which you can't see. Why can you not see that? I don't like that you can't see that. That broke it. That really broke it. Now it works. Okay. Sure. But yeah, this is my smash. It's like a all buttons in kind of thing. I'm considering getting rid of this length, which is just a transient designer that's keyed by the kick, snare, and tom groups. And when it keys this, it takes the attack off of everything from the room track and adds as much sustain as possible. So I literally never use it. It sounds cool sometimes to add some length, which is what it's called, but I never use it. So I'm considering getting rid of that and using a dirt bus instead. Excite is one of my favorites that I've had for a long time. It's a Pro-Q on either side doing the exact opposite things of a CLA 76 with slow attack, fast release in all buttons mode, and then a limiter after it to just make sure that it doesn't click. And then smack is a Kramer PIE with pre-emphasis and de-emphasis around it with Pro-Q, doing the exact opposite things again, just to make sure that it's like behaving. Those frequencies were always like really egregious on things that I ran through it when I set this stuff up, so I just cut them so it behaved in a way that I liked. And I left it that way in the template. Now what's good about it is that these are in 0 latency mode, so there's phase change, but it's the same, it's equal and opposite phase change on either side of the processor. So when you add the de-emphasis, it negates all the phase change. So you end up with a really easy to blend in compression that reacts only to the things that you want it to. And I think I actually have these wired up. Yeah, like I have low frequency relax and high frequency excite. If I pin this and show you Pro-Q, hit, oh, it's not on this one. What's the other one? Hit HF excite. When you turn that on, it just turns off the high frequency cut that matches the earlier high frequency cut. So it's basically just a boost after compression. So it just sounds livelier. Since you're compressing high end more going into this. And then low frequency relax is exactly what it sounds like. You turn this up and the pre-emphasis pulls down the low frequency. So it reacts less to low frequency. If you pull this all the way to 0, it does nothing. Turn this up and it does more. And in the middle is kind of where I like it usually. I don't usually touch this because it just works really well right there in the middle. And that keeps the snare, toms, and kick from like really blowing out the CLA 76, which was like the thing that I didn't like about it. So these will always be in this template. I like these 4. And I just blended in with this bus here. So I think I'll do a dirt bus. My template already just has like some stuff set up for me. Like REDDI is already ready. On the bass DI, I have console here in case I want to pre-EQ the DI, CLA 76 in case I want to slam the DI before it goes to these two parallel amps. And if I enable all of these, this is guitar rig with, this one's not using it, but guitar rig with the SVT2 Pro. And then I have the SVT 810, which is missing because I never do this right. I'm gonna fix this while I'm here. Oh, this is the wrong folder. No wonder. But look at, oh, Red-Wirez. It's right in front of me. 48K. And this is cap 0 inches. So I really like the SVT 810 with a D112 on it. Just look right in the center. It's a really good bass sound to me. I used to use the 3A on bass a lot. I usually don't now. I either use the channel strip or I use way down here in this bus I have Virtual Mix Rack, and I usually use FG401 on bass. So it's off right now. I can turn it on. The rock bass preset is really good to start with, so I always have that dialed up ready to go. You drink some. So those amps are always there on the DI. I usually don't use the DI signal for anything but the super low end, which I have. This is taking out the subsonics in linear phase, and then I have an MV2 and a limiter to like lock down the low end. And this only goes to the sub channel of my bass, which I've split. I have the highs only and the lows only that are in the same phase mode on Pro-Q3. So these blend together and they create the whole bass sound, except the low end only goes to the master. The high end goes through like all the compression that I typically use. So, woo. That's usually, I like to have the DI to go straight to that, but I like to have amps that I can control that I usually like on a DI. Here, I have the second one, the second channel that I blend in sometimes has a TS9 already turned on, and the cabinet is an 810, but an SM7, and it is cone 0 inches. I have to find that. And these sound really cool together. I think it's permanently phase swapped to be in phase, but it sounds really cool. That's because of the TS9 adds a phase flip, but those things I won't be changing. I don't know why I'm really going through that. I'm considering putting, see, there's no EQ on that. I'm considering putting the Focusrite channel on this instead, but I already have an EQ move here, so maybe not. I may put the Focusrite strip here instead, because this never has a thing on it. But I'll have to put a DI through it to see how that sounds. Yeah, so I run the bass straight to high, and then I just run exactly the same signal to low. It's just the same, and then I have a compressor here that's always side-chained, or it can't always be side-chained to my kick, or whatever the kick element is in the mix. And it's set really fast, so it just ducks the low end under the kick. All right, so I need to find some drum tracks to work with. Oh, I messed that up. Okay. Oh, I zipped it all. Right. I remember that. What can I do then? I want to do that. That wasn't really drums though. Oh man. Did I zip everything that I could use? A lot of this stuff isn't cleared for this kind of use, so I can't actually do that. Let's see. I think I can use... Tell you what, actually what I'll do is I'll use the drums from one of my songs, which I need to mix, but I'll just do this for now. And of course I didn't do it numbered, so I have to grab things one at a time, which you should never do. You should always number your exports, and I didn't do that. Room is there. Just a pain whenever you have to import things back in. 2 through 3. Let's see. Anything I missed? Hi-hat. I think that's it. For the drums at least. Right, I have to set up the routing. This routing in Studio 1.5 is really cool because it allows you to kind of split the signal with the listen bus. So I'm hearing everything that comes out of this regardless because it's running to my monitors, but I'm also running a loop back that OBS is capturing. So no matter what, this audio from this main bus goes to that output, and it gets split and goes to this one as well. So I get to process this with SonarWorks and hear it through my monitors, like I'm used to hearing. And then I split this loop back, and this gets to go unaltered straight to OBS, which is pretty cool. So now I should be seeing that. And we are seeing it. This is totally unprocessed, so this is just the drums as I exported them. Those with a keen ear will be able to tell that this is a Superior Drummer 2. It's just the stock kit. It's all I ever got. So, and I haven't bought Superior 3 yet. So, I didn't feel like I needed expansions, so I just didn't get any. So if I take all these off of solo safe, I can solo each individual one so you can hear what each individual parallel process is doing. I can just jack up the output. I just noticed something. I'm only getting one channel out of 2 to go through, and I don't know why that is. Oh, now it's both. Weird. Very, very strange. I think there may be something wrong with my cables. As if that's something new. So. This is that smack that I was talking about. And since everything runs to this, it's actually a fair bit of gain reduction. And obviously the meter is very slow. But it's got a good amount of smack to it, which is why it's called smack. The CLA 76 sounds like this. It's kind of ugly, but like I'm also shaving off the tops of it. Pretty much always there's something hitting the limiter. So that's cool. This length one is the one that I'm thinking about getting rid of, and it just does this. So it tries to take out the transients and just add like everything that's left. So like no stick hits, just room wash. You can blend into the room sound that you've got, and it's worked here and there before. I used to have this like preset at like -18 or something like that, and it just like made things sound messy. So I started leaving the template at -infinity, and now I don't ever use it. So I'm probably just gonna replace it with something else. This is Smash, so this is just the overheads and the room mics. I thought about putting Devil-Loc there, but I didn't really like it or decided against it or something. It may have been around the time that I got the Slate bundle, so I was just excited to put something from it there, which is what I did to try to get a low latency version of this, which is, there we go. I need to change this while I'm at it. This is Cytomic The Glue, and it's a SSL G bus compressor, like the quad bus compressor. And I have this just like 10-to-1 threshold all the way down, using a fixed release time, relatively long attack, and the sidechain high pass. So this does a very characteristic kind of knock. It's to add like pressure and impact to the kick, snare, and the toms. Do I have toms in this song? I think I do. I do. You hear it right there. It brings up some of the cymbals that are in the close mics. You hear that like picks up the stick attack. So really brings that out front, and I've got it like followed with a limiter, and it's always doing something. Contrast that with the smash bus. So like that could be a good drum sound on its own, just the compressed stuff, the parallel wet bus. So it just, that stuff feels good, and I don't want to touch it. In fact, I'm going to put that back at -6. I might leave this at 0 because that sounded really cool. But I'm going to change this bus pretty much entirely. And the goal here is I'm using unmixed drums. They're halfway mixed. They're exported from Superior Drummer, so they're like panned. And there's like kind of a balance, but it's not like a balance that I would do. It's just a balance. So, and there's none of my EQ on it. So it's unmixed drums. I'm just trying to find something that's like a flavor that will work on drums to begin with, and probably will only sound better with mixed drums. So first of all, I need to get more buses to run to this. So I'm going to open up all the other buses, the groups. Let me just do this in the big mode. Sometimes I like the big mode, but sometimes it gets really annoying. All right, so right now, looks like, yeah, so none of these are going there at all. So I'm going to add length. Move it up. That didn't do anything I wanted it to do, but that's fine. I'm gonna take that off. If I can. I don't know where it is. Oh, here we go. Oh, wait, no. I'm sorry. Remove. That's what I meant to do. Because it's like a pre-fader insert that I don't want. Whoa. These two, I want that to go there. This one, I want it to go there. I have outside on these two just because sometimes it's good to run this around some of the master compression. The kick and snare. So you have to be careful about it though, because if you have the group after this, like the drums group, EQ differently, then sending these to the master will sound different. So like if you did something on the drums bus to get rid of some hi-hat bleed or something like that, or make it less annoying, this can add it back if it's in the snare mics. So you have to be very careful with it, but sometimes it's useful because sometimes the compression is just too much and you need more kick, but more kick means more compression, but not this way. So that's a trick I picked up from Machine. Let's see. So re-solo this, and yeah, now everything is soloed except for the groups themselves because I don't want to hear those. So back up, not that far. Didn't mean to back up that far. I want to go to that middle part. All right, one thing I noticed is when I add any buses, they default to -6, so I gotta put those at 0 because I wanted to just send the whole thing there depending on what these fader levels are. So I'm just gonna get rid of these plugins. I don't want them. And now I have to think about what I can use for distortion that would sound good. I'm gonna think about Devil-Loc. I'm not going to use Decapitator immediately because it's not phase coherent. And if I'm doing parallel, I want it to make sure that it's phase coherent. So let's see, I'm just going to go and rename this Dirt. So I'm going to turn Crush down and I'll just play with Crunch for a second. That sounds cool, and I got there really quickly, but I'm gonna try something else and see if I like that flavor different or better or worse or whatever. I put this back on my favorites list recently, the Scheps 73, because I used the drive knob to get kind of those Neve direct-in guitar sounds on well, I don't know if it'll be a single, but a song that I just mixed. So I'm gonna see what that does on drums. That's too much, but you... I don't know if I like what the kick is doing there. It's way blown out. That's a fair bit smoother. And on this one, the hi-hat isn't distorting like it is in this one, which I find really interesting. So yeah, so I'm gonna rule out Scheps 73. It is disgusting, but I think what I'm aiming for here is something to like blend in that's smooth, distorted and dense, but smooth. I've considered just using an L1 smashed, but I don't think it'll sound good. So I'm gonna take this down to like 24. Yeah, I don't like that. It's just not what I'm looking for. So there's some distortion stuff in Virtual Mix Rack, which, to be honest, I didn't even play with the harmonics section of this stuff until really recently, because for whatever reason, way back, and like when I first heard about the Slate Virtual Mix Rack, I like watched some demos on this stuff because it was supposedly a huge deal in the plugin market or whatever. And way back when, I just couldn't tell the difference. I couldn't hear what it was doing. And it just seemed really expensive, and the bundle just makes it so much more affordable. So like I'm going for actual distortion here. So let's try the Neve first, since I didn't like Scheps 73. I'm not sure I like that either. It's just really thuddy. The 76. See, that's really pretty, but it's just not driven enough. So, where's trimmer? Whoa! Holy crap. That's incredible. I didn't know this was going to do this. It goes like full on. That's crazy. Hold on a second. That really, it freaks out when you drive it that hard. Interesting. I don't like it, but it's an interesting idea because it's something that I can leave in my pocket and potentially use later. Because I could be looking for like a really like splatty distortion kind of thing that just gates when you hit it really hard. It's almost kind of like what Devil-Loc does when you push it really hard, but it's not like the compression runs out of gain reduction or something like that. Or you overdrive the detector circuit is actually what you're doing in Devil-Loc. This is just like, that's crazy. But not what I'm looking for. So let's keep going. These are actually like the Virtual Tube Collection saturation modules. I'm gonna look at console first. All right, it's there, but it's not enough. So use preamp. And push mode. It's really just like a few percent more. If I push this with the trimmer, that's something to think about. I'm just gonna turn that off and put London next to it and see what this one does. I don't know if you were hearing what I'm hearing, but there is a really pronounced like mid-range grab in the Hollywood one that would be really cool on snare drums. That's really interesting. I'm gonna keep that in mind. I don't like the London one. I'm gonna keep that in mind. I'm pushing it really hard, but that's part of what I'm going for here. Let's see. I haven't heard New York on this yet. New York, I can't talk. I'm so tired. The title says I've been up for 27 hours, and that is not an exaggeration. In fact, I woke up at 6:15 p.m. yesterday, and I did not go to sleep. So that means that I am now at 28 hours and a quarter. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, something really interesting is happening. It's got a very similar like grab on the mid range. It's really like grabbing onto the mid range specifically and doing something really cool there in the middle. It's not blowing out on the bottom end. It's not like super tinny high end. I know neither of these are as smooth as Devil-Loc, but I'm gonna just keep thinking about this. Hollywood again. Actually, this would be easier. I'm going to save this in the B state, and I'm going to change the A state to this one, and I'll just click back and forth. Yeah. That's tough. Yeah, I think that would end up coming down to which drum kit, or like how the drums are recorded, or how I'm processing them to tell which one of those is going to be better. That's tough. Man, that sounds so cool. So, I'm OCD. So I'm going to put this right directly on 12 decibels. These are just turned all the way up. No high passing or anything. Full mix. You hear how the New York one is accentuating the snares themselves more than the body of the snare. London wasn't doing any of that. It was just blowing out the low end. But specifically, New York is getting the snare, like the top end of the snare in that like boomy, huge mid-range area of the kick. And then Hollywood is getting like the body of the snare in that like grunt. I'm not sure which one to pick there. One moment. There. Kind of. Yeah. I don't know. It's very close. Oh. That's got some attitude. I feel like New York would end up getting harsh on a lot of drums. So I'm going to actually go with Hollywood here. Whoops. Get out of here. Yeah, I think I'm just going to go with Hollywood because that sounds so cool. Now I have to compare this to other types of distortion. So for that, I'm going to compare with Devil-Loc again, because that was so smooth. And loud. I have an idea, and I think what I'm going to do is put Pro-Q after it, and I'm going to create a low pass and just smooth out that like crunchy top end, because I don't necessarily need it. It's gonna just mess up the cymbals. Unless I want that, in which case I could just open this up later. I just want to start with something that sounds good to begin with. This is really bright. I wish there was a hybrid between the two. Because this is so smooth, but it sounds really good with the high end just open, whereas the other one just sounds so crackly. But it has that character that I love. Also, this is something cool that I discovered kind of by mistake, but it makes sense and I should have known this. If you do a low cut, if you do a high pass on a distorted signal, which you can see the meter here, you can see the peak meter here, and the RMS. If this band is off, this low cut, watch the meter on the dirt channel. The RMS is very, very close to the peak value because it's like so squared off. Now watch what happens when I turn on this low cut. Suddenly it's distorted, but all that peak headroom, or not peak headroom, but all that peak level just came back, even though it doesn't sound different. It just, there's a lot of peak level now for some reason. And what it is because when you distort something to the point that it's squared off, it actually can kind of sort of create subsonic and DC offset artifacts, which you remove by using a capacitor, which is the same thing as a low cut. A high-pass filter network is built with a capacitor, and capacitors block DC. So when you block DC and you remove that offset, you no longer can have this super squared off, like crazy whatever it is kind of wave, because it's mathematically impossible for something that blocks DC to let something that has DC artifacts in it through. So when you do that, you end up with higher peak levels for areas where this filter is changing phase to roll those frequencies off the ground. Essentially is what's happening here. If you're talking about an analog EQ, everything in this area here that is not being sent out, so like if I did this, everything that is above, and you can't see my finger, I don't know why I'm doing that, but everything that is above this line is being sent to ground. So naturally, that creates a pretty major phase shift. And when you create phase shifts, you change the waveform inherently. So you're actually pretty much recreating a peak level that didn't exist in the original waveform by trying to get rid of the subsonic stuff that actually isn't doing anything. On an original source, that doesn't seem to happen. In fact, you usually see your peak level go down when you do that. When it's distorted, the opposite happens because you've already removed some of the peak level by squaring it off, creating those kind of artifacts. And then you end up creating a brand new artifact by introducing this strong phase shift. So that's something interesting, and the reason that you usually don't put high passes after clipped material if you want the advantage of the clipped material to be lower peak level. So that's just something interesting I've observed. So I forgot where I was because I went on that spiel. Alright, so that's his Hollywood character, and this is Devil-Loc. It's so tough because Devil-Loc just sounds so good, so smooth. But this has a really crazy character I love. So I think that this slope is too steep, so I'm just going to go to a 6 dB per octave slope and try this again. Whoops. Alright, I think this is just going to be down to what it sounds like in context of the drums. So I'm going to move on from that for now. Leave Devil-Loc there for the time being. I don't want to put a console on my parallel stuff because it doesn't lend itself to being parallel. Usually I'm picking these things so because they're phase coherent or close to it. Like I'm using this in zero latency mode so that it can be used in real time, or at least so that it's not introducing the kind of latency that this EQ is introducing in linear phase mode. In fact, I have 75.6 milliseconds plug-in latency right now with ozone turned off. If I change this to natural phase, which is not zero latency, that goes all the way down to 18.3 milliseconds. So that's introducing a large amount of latency. If I put this at high, it's 203.6 milliseconds. So if I'm tracking an overdub or something like that, I have to change this to zero latency, which does sound worse, but that's just something I've kept in mind since I changed that. I used to not have that as a linear phase filter, but because it is a low cut to get subsonics and weird things out of this compressor, which is why it's so steep, it needs to be linear phase or else it will drastically change its relationship to the amp tracks. And if I have an amp track that is printed, or if I printed one already, then it'll change its relationship to that too. And I don't want to do that. So, yeah, so any of the channel strips or analog EQ models you could add to something like this will have a phase shift if you do anything to it. And like, for instance, if I pulled this up, this by default has strong phase shift because it's accurately modeling what each of these components do. So, and if you change the band frequency on these EQs, it changes phase relationships. Very slightly, but it does. It can change gain relationships even. So that's just, I don't want to add something like this to a parallel chain that really relies on the phase being very close to, if not exactly the same, across the entire frequency spectrum. I'm okay with this happening. I'm not okay with it happening down here, because any comb filtering that might happen in this range, honestly, it probably will end up not being audible. But in the bass region, it definitely would be. So, do that for the time being. I will leave that as it is. Wait, will I? Trying to decide. Yeah, why not? I want to change this channel strip. The minute I start doing this, I have second thoughts about it. But I need to hear what a bass would do. So I guess I'm gonna end up half mixing this song, because I have a bass TI for it. Hold on a second. So I'll just drag that in. It looks like this because I have data zoom on. I can turn that way down. And I have a bass amp print from one of the tracks that I make here. So it's very close to, if not exactly the same. And it does this. So it's a really cool bass tone. I don't remember how I had it set. So I don't remember, but I have the bass DI here, going directly to my bass low. Which literally all it is MV2, which does upward and downward compression at the same time. So you end up kind of like leveling the signal into whatever margin you specify. So it does this kind of sustain thing. And I had that followed by the L1 with a deliberate gain increase. And the reason you don't hear artifacts on the L1 is because I have this running into just the bass sub channel, which has a high cut filter on it. So really the point of this channel is to just lock down the very low end of the bass. And lately I've been changing where these crossovers are. So I'm going to change them in the template too. I used to use 110. I've decided that I like 90 or 85. I think I'm going to use 90. So now if I play this back, it's a little bit less than mid. So these together sounds like this. And that is something that I have to do quite often, and I'm going to fix it in the template. Usually these tracks, all three of these are in phase, and I don't make any phase changes here. And then when you add the bass low, it does this really weird cancellation thing, especially if you use plugins and it's already pretty phase coherent. So I'm going to flip the phase in Fabfilter right there. So if I decide I need to add this, it needs to be phase flipped. You didn't hear any distortion there because all that is affecting is the bass low right now because these amp tracks are off. So I just really overdrove the REDDI. But you can barely tell because I'm really locking down. You can even see that the RMS is like right up against the peak level because it's really leveled off. Now, I want to just leave this kind of like that, so it just automatically makes DI sound better. But I'm going to have to leave the bass knob down and just play with the level. And see if I'm pushing it into my amp tracks too far. Because there may be situations where I don't want it to overdrive that much on the amp track. which I think already has drive on it, so I'm gonna turn that down. There, now you can see it. So this should be mostly clean, is the way this is usually set up. A little too much drive there at the top end. It sounds great, it's just not what I want in the template. I want it to sound less lifeless like this and more like this. So I'll probably leave it straight up and down just like that. It just sounds better with it flipped. So now I have this amp track, a clean track, and a low track. And that's cool because this low track will be going to where the lows from these are split. So it already goes around the compression on the master, so the master doesn't pump when you run too much bass through it. This is just basically a balance for the low subs of the bass because it's unaffected by an amp or a cab or anything like that. It's straight from the DI. So that's cool. That's the way I want to leave that. I'm going to pull all these down. Or, you know. I usually leave this one up. Because it is good for it to be up when the bass DI is dropped in, because otherwise you won't hear it. It's good to be able to hear that the bass DI is working. So I just leave that up at 0. The TS9 one sounds like this. And what's cool about that is I used an SM57, it's an SM7 on the 810. This is the same cabinet, a different position with a substantially less low frequency focused microphone. And I put drive into it. It's just this smooth, focused overdrive that I believe, yeah, I have the phase reverse on it so I can blend it in with these. And if I go back to here, is just so good. The little soak. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to dial that way back for the template, because I end up dialing it back after I open it for a mix a lot. Like that's plenty if I want an amp track. And then I have the TS9. And then I have the low. So that's all really, really versatile. Man, the more I think about it, the more I feel like I probably don't want any drive on the regular D112 because it's such a jangly. And I've got the REDDI going into it, so I might just leave it with no drive on it. It tends to stay cleaner in the low mids that way. Yeah, so I'll probably leave it like that. So I'll leave TS7 down, the clean SVT up, bass low down, DI has to stay at 0. And the print is just there, so. Considering changing this to the Focusrite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dial in like a nasty mid-range boost. Which I do this a lot with like 1K. Which this is actually 1K like over here. The SSL knobs are always like way off in this region. So you end up like, if you put it at 1K, it's more like 700, and this is more like 500. And then this is 200 or something like that, and then you're all the way down at like 150 or below. So it's a wider range than it says, but it's also really weird how it doesn't track at all. There's a really wide region over here where it stays in a very small frequency range, then it jumps. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, but they all do that. All the Waves plugins did that too, just to a lesser degree. Let's say that's what we wanted to do. So let's grab the Focusrite and see if we can do the same thing. All right, let's see how close that is. Trying to figure out what I did differently. So this is about 1K at 1Q or 1.1, 8.3 dBs. Let's go 1.1. It's about 1K. I kind of like this actually because I'm thinking about the way that the de-esser can be used as an exciter on specific frequencies. The filters are really tight compared to the SSLs, so I could shave a lot of high end off really quickly with that. The only thing that worries me is the expander doesn't act the same way, which, believe it or not, I use because I let the plugins create their own noise because the gating of the noise sounds cool. It's weird. But also, it like got me in the habit of using the expanders, so I actually do usually end up gating out a lot of noise that I don't want. I got really monotone when my voice started hurting. But yeah, so what did I do here? 1.3 at 18. Let's replicate it. I know there's the 16, so we'll do like 1 point something. Because these are broader too. This is going to be good for bass because I didn't do much different and it just sounds clearer. There's low end, but it sounds like it's easier to get the high end of the bass to poke out. And on an amp track, that is key. It's very key. So I'm going to set all this to defaults. Yeah, literally everything should be default. For now, I'll change this in every mix, but since it's a print track, oh, these need to do defaults too. Actually, I'll just leave those on ×3. Since this is a print track, what that means is if this is someone's amp track or if it's a finished bass tone, this is what I want to be able to finish it with, and I need to be able to hear what in the world that tone is before I can do that. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to leave this there instead of, instead of the SSL. Hit random on it. Let's see. Other places that I think, I want to leave the SSL on all the drums because it's like, that's the hallmark. That's where you put an SSL, you run drums through an SSL to get that pop, that aggression, and the mid-range meat. And I'm trying to put the Focusrite on stuff that will just sound really good through a very saturated kind of EQ. Like I'm considering taking, because they're acoustics, I'm just going to take these straight off. I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just going to put the Focusrites on them. This is something else I've been thinking about. I don't know that I want to use this anymore, but I'll just leave it there in case. What would be cool is if I had one of the VCC channels on every channel, which is what I talked about at the beginning of the stream. I was talking about how I used to kind of scoff at them because I couldn't tell the difference, and now I really can. They make a big difference, and it's really important. So, but I may just leave that to groups in the template, which I think I'm already doing that kind of. Yeah, all these have the mix bus on them on the Trident, which is so good on drums. So good on drums. And I actually may already have. Yeah, I have the virtual mix bus grouped for the master groups, not master groups, but you know, the top level groups: drums, perk, bass, acoustic, electric, lead, keys, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Oh, right. I was gonna put so that's all defaults. I'm just gonna kill that. Put the focus right there. Specifically because it's good on the bass. That's the point that I'm trying to make here, is that I'm doing these things because it's good on those instruments. That's why I came in here, to see what it would be good. And I know that I want to use the SSL on the drums because it is aggressive. It is kind of ballsy. But yeah, I mean, I may at some point down the line decide that I actually do like the Focusrite on literally everything and make a template that has no SSL in it. Who knows? The electrics, I like the mid-range thing that I get from the SSL. Keys, I may, because they're typically really low mid weird, I may just take the SSL off of them. But then again, maybe not, because the compressor does something really good to keys. And the SSL has the auto gain compressor, so maybe not. On vocals though, I am, again, just blanket taking the SSL off and putting the Focusrite on it. Every single one. So that's those. I have the Focusrite on the bass group, which is fine. Everything else I think has the SSL on the group, which is fine. I want to hear acoustics, which the song that I've been using has none. Let's see. I think I have a song that I have stems for. Nope, not that one. Did not do acoustic for that one either. Which one is it? What on earth? I know that folder's not empty. Come on. I don't know. Yeah, that's not what I thought it was. It's unfortunate because I'm really was thinking that I had some exported acoustics I could just drop in. But apparently I do not. Guess I could lift some acoustics. Okay, I'll take 5 into, we'll go here. So yeah, I just have to have it soloed. This is a stereo overdub. And I already replaced it, but I'm going to see what I can get out of this thing. For acoustics, a lot of times I do like to use the channel strip compressor. So what I've gathered so far, I need to add gain. What, like 10 dB? Yeah, that's about right. Auto release is doing something I really, really don't like. So interesting. So I just playing around with it, seeing how I like how it feels. And I was enjoying this a lot more on the bass. I'm gonna try a different ratio. And now there is a feature that you can use on this where you can change these 3 filters. There's a band filter, a bell filter, essentially, with a huge sweepable frequency range, a high-pass filter and a low-pass filter that you can assign to the compressor, the gate, both, or listen to it in the audio chain or just turn them off. By default, the high and low pass filters go to the compressor and the bell goes to the gate, which is useful, very useful. And in this situation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can get some of that boominess out of the compressor. And that's what being able to listen to this in the audio chain actually does for you, is you can actually tune this to what you want the compressor to hear, essentially. So that's feeling better. Yeah, so I just used the high pass to clean up some of that low end that I don't need. This doesn't sound bad. The compressor was just listening to the low end too much. I know I was moving that while it wasn't doing anything for me, but I have kind of an idea of what the hold should sound like, so I was trying to just figure out where the numbers were and watch the gate meter to see if it did anything in some of the gaps. I like to use expanders instead of gates, mostly because I really dislike hearing the gate open and close. I hate it. And expanders usually don't do that the same way, which is nice. This is another thing. You can hit key listen and it will tell you what the gate is listening for, which is not compressed. That's part of why it's there. So I add that peak in the key chain, the key chain, and the side chain for this expander, just so that I know that it's listening to the acoustic. So if I start at the beginning, I can change the threshold for just the noise. And if you watch it, you can actually see it holding. It didn't really there, which is odd. It just did. I must have changed the threshold again. But sometimes I like holds, sometimes I really don't. So sometimes it's good because you know that like after a tom hit, for instance, you want the gate to hold open for a certain amount of time and then decay. Maybe because you have some really cool stuff right at the beginning when the trigger opens the gate, but then you want it to kind of fall off without the cymbal bleed having anything to do with it, so that can be useful for that. But usually on stuff like acoustic or other sources where there's kind of an indefinite amount of decay, I want to just turn the hold all the way down so that I can hear it as little as possible. I don't want to hear the expander or the gate working. I just want it to just do a job in the background. That was hard to hear, so I'm gonna turn it up on my monitors. Smooth, and I didn't even touch the release yet, which I was going to change to at least 1.5 seconds. Yeah, so that's not bad. The thing is, I'm conflicted about the dynamic section here because it works, but I felt like I had to toy with this more than I ever would have to toy with the SSL strip. And the EQ is strange in that, like, because you can't do a bell for the high and low shelf, the high and low shelves is what they are. I found myself having to kind of think about how to combine the filter and the low frequency to do what I wanted. Because I want to add low end, but I don't want it to be boomy. So I had to bring that up, pull some low mids out, and use the high cut, or the high pass, which left me with 2 bands to do other things too. So, which I suppose is why it's useful to have this extra gain, this extra EQ available to put into the audio chain. You just click this and it's in the audio chain now. So I may consider that in the future. For the time being, I think I'm going to leave this on acoustics. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to turn this off. Or no, I'm going to use the other guitar. Turn it off here and use the Brainworks SSL. Random, please. And see what I get from this instead. I do have to move the low cut up much farther with the SSL to get the same effect. It's almost 100 hertz higher. Trying to find that harsh spot. This was recorded with an SM57. Alright, found it, so now I have to add the high end. So I have some things left to do. Not the least of which is the dynamics, which I am about to do. I'm just going to set this expander up first. And I really like this expander because when you set the range, that is the maximum range. Or that is the range that it goes down to when you have the threshold set up correctly. It's much steeper than the Focusrite one. And you have the ability to turn it way down low. And this usually is much fiddling as I do with the expander. Was I using 2:1 ratio? What was the attack? 39.2 milliseconds. So on the SSL, that's just slow attack. There's 2 settings: fast attack, slow attack. Fast attack is like 1 milliseconds or something like that. And then this is program dependent, 33 milliseconds. So it's generally faster, can be slower depending on what goes through it. It's kind of frequency dependent. It's a very good sounding attack. So the release is program dependent as well. So if you set it at 0.4 seconds, it's usually a lot quicker. But I'm going to do the same thing where I started it all the way down, 2:1, and get some compression going. This is auto gain as well. And one thing I didn't do, and I can't really do, I am going to boost what's going in here a bit because I have more gain for the threshold on the Focusrite. So I'm going to boost this by about 6 dB and pull the channel fader, which does not affect distortion in any way on any of these channel strips, down by the same amount. And more compression. It's hitting the whole of the channel strip harder, but I needed more gain, so that's where I get it. And that's primarily because these are not well gain staged. And there's your auto gain. If you turn the dynamics off, it sounds the same loudness. All right, what does this sound like? Very pumpy the dynamics are here. I'm not exactly sure why. There's something grabbing that I don't like. So what I just did is I ended up taking the high pass completely out of the side chain for the compressor. And I think the reason that I like this better is because with the fast release, it seems to not be like grabbing and not grabbing, grabbing and not grabbing when there's constrictive interference on the higher harmonics. So I backed the threshold off, turned the release down, and pretty much completely removed the high pass from the chain, and I'm just doing less compression because it's grabbing on the strong attacks. And now what I'm hearing is there's a lot of like jangle. Which is right around where this is set up, which is that 4K mark. This isn't really different, but I think it's because I took so much out, and on the other one I didn't do that. So I'm gonna change that. This is really interesting to me because what I'm hearing is I like how smooth the character is on the dynamics on the SSL, but the excuse me, the EQ is almost coming across sterile, which is really interesting to me that it can do that. I don't know if it's because I recorded these in a slightly different place or not. In fact, let's test that. Pull this down here and just switch the order. So this is now the other guitar track through this SSL. Interesting. So the second time I played it, it's slightly different. Less low end. Less of that harsh top end. But there's another thing that's different between the two. The Focusrite is really grabby, and it sounds like a kind of heavy-handed compressor. And I don't mind that so much. 1:5 ratio, or 1.5:1. Infinity to 1. Yeah, it's remarkably grabby. I set it at 50 milliseconds on the attack. Interesting. Now it sounds less grabby. And more like the SSL. In fact, let's throw them into stereo and see what they do together. I got them really close without listening to them together. But here's the killer feature from the SSL dynamic section that is really making it hard for me to decide that these should just stay on the Focusrite, even though I love how the acoustic sounds through them. Is this simple? Either the attack is fast or it's not. When it's fast, it's like gooey, really gushing together. Or more polite, just grabby. Or you switch it off, and it's punchy. And this is really, really good on like a piano, a slow attack, or even fast attack sometimes, but the release cranked all the way down at any ratio setting, really. So that compared to this Focusrite, which has continuously variable attack time, like most of the compressors. Like that's an interesting setting that doesn't work on this acoustic. This works really well. Let's back that up a bit. Pull us down. And there it's kind of doing the same thing the SSL was doing, except a little bit less grindy, if that makes any sense. that's as fast as it goes. And it's pretty comparable. It's slightly different, and this one does have more of a propensity to try to leave the signal more alone, but it will pump slightly in a way that can be good. And in this one, it tends to kind of sort of distort in a way instead of try to smooth out its response if the release is set really fast, which I kind of like, actually. It's probably because this is so program dependent, and I do not know how program dependent this release is. I know it has an auto setting, but I mean, this is what it did. It's so much. If I slow this down though, turns into more of a leveler. And it sounds markedly different than the long settings. So it's not just a long setting that they call auto, it's auto release. But for whatever reason, I usually like how channel strips sound when the release is just cranked. And that sounds great. So I think I am inclined, because of the compression headroom, to leave the Focusrites here. There, it's all zeroed out. So both of those, enable them. Mono these again. All right, what else? I think I already did. Yeah, I already put the Focusrite on vocals because I tried this in another project, and I actually did a listening test with a bunch of friends, and it came back that the Focusrite sounded cleaner. I dialed the Focusrite and the SSL in as close as possible as I could to each other, and I'm looking at upgrading, but since I'm using KRKs, I can't tell the difference between like or I couldn't tell at least the difference between the low end or the low mids, except there were some consonants that I could tell were slightly different, and I kind of liked how they sound on the Focusrite better for certain reasons that may or may not apply to different mixes. But then when I heard from other people, it was obvious the difference. Like the Focusrite just sounded better and sounded cleaner, easier to listen to. And I may still use this SSL in certain situations, like I was just rolling a really thick vocal track, or like maybe it's a scream or something like that, and it's naturally harsh. Then that low mid push that the SSL has could probably have an impact, but I think that I like the EQ on vocals especially. So I'm just going to leave it there and leave everything else SSL. Now, let's go back to that dirt track, or dirt channel, because I did not decide between the two. Going to select in pool, remove from pool. I'm going to do the same with the bass before I forget about it. Because what I don't want to do is leave all of these audio files from other projects just sitting inside the template. Whoops. For when I start a new project or a new mix, I don't want to just have other files sitting in there that get copied every single time. That would be a mess. So, This plugin really needs a trim on it because it's always louder, like a lot louder. I think the like deluxe version of this has a trim, and this one does not. I guess I could always turn this up. Can't see my meters. All right. Man, that is dramatic. What I'm trying to get a feel for now, that I've just noticed, when the hi-hats are playing, with the kick and snare playing a lot, this, like neither saturation, really does one or the other thing better. This just sounds really smooth. But something I noticed when the cymbals kick in, which is gonna put one of the over the other pretty quickly, and it's gonna be tough for me to let one go. Those cymbals. Goodness gracious. If I take the Pro-Q low pass off, that's just oppressive, and that's going to cause problems the minute you bring that up in a mix, unless it's controlled somehow. It's just so much, not just distortion, but like it's just pushing the cymbals up too far. This sounds better on the kick and snare, and what I might do is I might change the relationship of what's going to this. So, just to hear it again, this is the Hollywood in the same place. It's not even close. So different. It is this distortion on the kick and snare, which was that cool character thing that's really crunchy, and that's what I'm not sure I like. But the cymbals don't get in the way, and that I do like. Because if anything, I want to distort the cymbals more, but I want them to not become more prominent, if that makes any sense. So I'm wondering if I'll end up doing a Pro-Q like pre-emphasis and de-emphasis thing again, just to try and get those cymbals to not be so oppressive. Because that sounds so cool. But this does too. And I especially liked how this sounded with the drums. In fact, let's go back into context. Here's the drums. I'm clipping a little bit, aren't I?
Let's see. Just turn the limiter on. No dirt. Dramatic difference. And it's not compression. It's compressed because it's distorted, but it's not compression. There's another thing that I'm doing in my mixes now. It's, the console emulation to really squash the peaks together. Like that changes the balance entirely with the parallel stuff in. If I take all the parallel stuff out, this is what that section sounds like. That's boring. So you add the parallel. It's louder, but you're here listening to the compression, the feel. Now if I add the Devil-Loc, it's too much, but if we blend that in, like especially beforehand. That's just so good. Oh, my computer is unhappy with me. I'm running a really low buffer size. And ozone turned on. That sounds great with no big cymbals. And then it's a lot of cymbal. So let's go back to the beginning with the Hollywood instead. And that sounds distorted. So try and blend it in instead. I'm just not sure I like it blended in, even with the low pass on it. So I may end up doing Devil-Loc with a pre-emphasis, de-emphasis, after all. Just interesting. Let's toy with the Hollywood first. So Pro-Q, I'm gonna name this one. Pre-dirt. Because I'm pretty sure to name those things differently. Pre-emphasis Pro-Q. Pre-emphasis EQ. Just so they were different. So I'll have pre-dirt. And what I want to do with this is take a shelf at 4K. Let's type it in, Ben. 4K. Let's do 12 dB. Let's do more. So we're like maxing out the gain range of Pro-Q. But what we're gonna do later, we're gonna call this post-dirt. take the same frequency and reduce it by the same amount. So now we have this, which honestly I don't think is going to work. I think we need to meet somewhere in the middle or push the high end less. Because we are really pushing it. We use a different distortion. Actually, that might behave better. When we change frequency like that is when we introduce a lot of phase shift. So I'm going to try not to do that. And just use gain. And I think honestly we're just pushing too much high end into it. So I'm going to go back to the Hollywood. And we're going to decrease the amount of gain. Change our scale back so I can see what's happening. We're going to push this until we start to get as much distortion on the cymbal as we were on the kick and snare here. Alright, so that's 9 dB. It's easier to handle. Change that scale again. So now we have this. Which is distorted. We're distorting the high end, but then the high end isn't getting louder. If I take those away, actually what I need to do is I need to turn off this band, but leave the high cut. So this is what it would be like before. So get the high cut. Which is fine. If we turn our pre-emphasis and de-emphasis on, though, we have this. Initially, it doesn't sound much different. Now the high end sounds a little denser. I'm wondering if we need to actually go lower on that frequency. So I'll take 4,000 and turn it into 3,000. Wrong band. Give me this band. 3K. And back it up. So now I'm curious what that's going to do to Devil-Loc, because that was what was so offensive on those cymbals. So this is what it was before. Initially very smooth. and then so abrasive. So let's use pre-emphasis and de-emphasis and see what happens. This could be really cool to add. And now I'm again not sure which one I want. So I'm going to have to do this in context. Here is the Hollywood with our pre-emphasis and de-emphasis EQ. Take it out. Put it back in. Take it out. Back in. I'm gonna go forward. Curious. That sounds distorted, so now it's smoother. So, same area with Devil-Loc. Does not sound distorted. Without, with, switch, This is one of those things that I mentioned earlier where the level lock, you could overdrive the detector circuit so it would just like go blank essentially for a second. You get really weird gated sounds out of that depending on the rhythm you put into it. I'm curious what that sounds like actually. I think that just made us win. I think it just made it win. So I'm going to disable that as a secondary flavor, and I'm just going to leave Devil-Loc there, and I'm going to find a place where it sits happily but distorted with Crush, and then with that idea in my back pocket that I can just turn Crush up and go wild. Because it can do things like bring it down below. That's huge. Listen to this. I mean, what? So that's really cool, and it sounds like this. To be cool as its own effect. And like none of this is EQ'd. Granted, they're really good drum samples, but I mean, that's how it is. It's crazy that it works like that. Something I should do just in case. I'm gonna have to remember to undo that, but I remember that the overheads are out of phase for some reason in these samples. So I wonder what this sounds like now. I'm just gonna put the back at 1, leave it there. This is at 7 now. As I said, it has to be even. And then not overbearing anymore. What was this? You can still tell it's distorted, and it's overdriven, but like it's much more bearable. You can mix that in way easier. In fact, it's kind of hard to do the old balancing that I had here because that just sounds so much better. No parallel. It just sounds so cool. So I think what I'm gonna do is leave it at negative 18 maybe, like I'd had the old length bus, but this actually sounds good. And if I want to, I'll just, oh yeah, pull up the dirtier one. So let's see what negative 15 sounds like. Negative 12. That's subtle. Kind of good. But it's not as good as this. That adds width somehow, and I really like that. So I'm probably just gonna leave it like that. Call it the dirt bus. And let's see, it would be negative 16.5 would be 1.5 up. Kind of. Yeah, negative 17, then point, yeah. Negative numbers, man. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it like that. It's a lot denser. That could be a bad thing. I'll leave this halfway between where I keep putting it and where it has been. I'll put that at negative 18, and I'll leave the other stuff alone. And that will do it for the drums, I think. Which is really cool that it sounds like that. That's just awesome. I feel like there was something else that I wanted to do with those things. Vocals, maybe. I've already got the virtual mix bus stuff set up. I was using virtual channel on a lot of these things to get some extra saturation. I'm not sure I need to. That's not grouped. Okay, that's good. No group there. So, I think we are good. I like the SSL on all the other stuff. I like the Focusrite on these. I may try the Focusrite on guitars in a session, but I'm not going to do that in the template because I already like what I get from the SSL on guitars. It would just be experimenting and deciding that, oh wow, this actually blows the SSL away to make me change, which is fine. That can happen. I'm allowing it to happen. So, things to do. Get rid of everything in here that is not part of the template. Change the zoom. Put this back at home. Close browser. Clear the clip indicators. Ah, yes, I almost forgot. This needs to not be permanently phase reversed. And then I'll just put this on main, which I think I'm just going to leave on L3 and 4 because my loop back is set up that way. And now this is going to be save as. Do I replace existing? Is it called July? It is called July, so I'll just replace the existing one. Explorer's doing some weird stuff. Open that. This is called SSL VMR. I think what I'm going to call this is FSC Pro Q3, because I used to use Q10 for like the secondary EQs, and I don't anymore because why would you do that when you have Pro Q3? Parallel, let me do parallel / dirt. Effects track, which has been there. Instead of VMR, I'm going to make this say VCC, because that's really what's special about this one. VMR, I just use. Okay. That's it. No, don't save my changes, because I've saved the template. And now to check that. Once that closes, I'm going to create a new song. Use the New one says SSL FSC VCC Pro Q3 parallel / dirt FX rack. 24-bit. Let's do this. Create a new one. Load everything again. I feel like loading is faster since I got an iLok 3 too. I used to use iLok Cloud for my Slate stuff, and I was in the middle of a time where I was working on a session for somebody and the internet cut out and it killed the export in such a way that like it doubled the gain in the export, and then it continuously doubled the gain until Studio One crashed in all the Slate plugins, which were iLok Cloud authorized, but since the internet went down, I couldn't do it. So I said, that's enough of that. I'm going to get an iLok 3 just in case, and that will be that. Okay. So what I'm looking for is things that I changed. We've got dirt. These should be on. They are on. That has the Focusrite on it. Yes. Good. REDDI is already turned on, which is good. Perfect. Outstream for you. So that was perfect. It worked exactly as it should have. What I didn't do is I didn't reset the horizontal view. So maybe I should do that. And save as template, replace existing, mix template. I considered doing this a similar thing for my tracking template because I do like to use kind of the same tricks that I always use on, like, I always use the same processing on my Superior Drummer preset because it always works for the stuff that I write, and I'll change it depending on what I want to do. But it uses a lot of the same tricks, assuming that it can run 0 latency. But like all the Virtual Console Collection stuff does run 0 latency, so I should incorporate a lot of that stuff, and I just haven't done it yet. But I'm so tired. I've been up since 6:15 p.m. yesterday, like I said earlier, and I just don't want to do any mixing or anything else tonight. So I accomplished what I wanted to. I learned some things, incorporated the new stuff. Well, most of that wasn't new. The dirt stuff was not new. I just haven't been thinking about it really. So that was cool that I got it to do something neat. Yeah. So that was fun. And this will tell me whether this all worked. Wow, I can already tell that I'm really out of sync. Yeah, I'm gonna have to change that. As I'm just using NDI of a wireless on the medium setting to my computer, and it looks like it's just really unhappy with the amount of latency. I can't even think. I really gotta go to bed. You can probably see how tired I am in my eyes. Do I look tired? I think I'm tired. So, see, they got that. I'm just now getting used to all this stuff. I haven't used it on a stream before, so. I do have an app that will allow me to use my phone as a camera with no latency. I just thought that this one would work because it's It's NDI, and it worked with pretty much no latency the last time that I used it. So I don't know what's different. It's not plugged into the computer, so I wonder if that has something to do with it. So, but yeah, I think everything worked on the stream. I just know that it took a small amount of planning to figure out how to get this all to work, but I'm using a single interface to do it all, some extra software, and of course a hardware loop back, which I think apparently I need to work some kinks out of because it was dropping a channel. So, but I think it's all working, which is cool because I'd like to mix, well, I got to remix a song that I wrote called Slow Down that I performed with Girl Clothes back in 2019. I think it was 2019 at least. It might have, no, it had to be 2019 that I did that with Girl Clothes. We went and we played at the Caledonia Lounge in Athens last year, and I got to play my song Slow Down with them, which was cool because I hadn't got to play any of my songs live before, so that was fun. But the recording is finished. I just don't like the rough mix anymore. So I'm going to set the whole thing up on a stream, provided I don't feel like this after staying up for 30 hours. Yeah, I'm going to remix it with some different ideas. I'm definitely going to use the dirt bus. So that'll be fun. Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be fun to do a mix on stream. It'll be fun to like try to process what I'm doing and explain it. I don't think I had anybody show up to the chat this time, which is sad, but I mean, it's whatever. I don't really have an audience yet, so I'm just getting used to talking to a camera, talking about what I'm doing, getting used to like trying to explain things as I'm thinking about it instead of just sitting here and twiddling knobs and having to say something after, because it's boring. But yeah, hopefully this was a good test at least, and that things worked okay. I'm putting this up on YouTube, so at least have a record that I streamed it. I don't remember if I turned on the replay feature in Twitch, so there might not be a VOD, but it'll be okay because I've got a recording. Anyway, I'm gonna go now because I'm very tired and I want a snack and to do something else and go to sleep. Specifically, I want to sleep a long time and have coffee. So I'm gonna do that. All right. Well, good night.